Charles, we are starting to see some indicators that perhaps history will not look upon Barack Obama as favorably as maybe people one time thought it might. How are you today?
I'm doing well here, just waking up. Fortunately, I woke up shortly before my maid arrived and was fully dressed to receive her.
These are
Um,
problems.
yeah, it is. I mean, well, because traffic is rough in the morning, and so she's supposed to be here at 8, but she frequently gets here at like 7:40 or whatever. But anyway, um, things are great here. I'm going to play tennis today. Going out to a nice dinner to celebrate the award that my team won for the apartment renovation, and watching history finally catch up to B-Rock. I mean, here's a guy who was celebrated. I don't know if you remember after the election or as the election approached. There was video of a group of kids who seemed to be transported into a different level of existence. You know, who were just so excited about a bunch of black kids, so excited that Barack Obama was going to be president, the euphoria for him and for Michelle, the magazine covers. I mean, before his inauguration, people were seriously talking about his face needs to be carved on Mount Rushmore, or better yet, maybe we'll have a new monument. Forget about these white guys on Mount Rushmore. Then he gets the Nobel Peace Prize for doing sweet fuck all for the potential of what he might do as president. Then he and his morons, the Secretary of State, both Hillary and John Kerry, tear up decades of precedent, shred the Monroe Doctrine, open up our border, institute regime change, which nobody ever voted for across the Middle East, meddled in spied on foreign leaders, spied on the Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, journalists, and for what? I mean, over the course of his 8 years, the economy never got back to the trajectory it was under George W. Bush, which was itself under the trajectory of Ronald Reagan. And he wrecked the healthcare industry. He bloated the roles of the public sector. He encouraged blue states to go down and descend into the hell that you find California, New York, Illinois, and other blue states, and the big cities in those blue states are just cesspools of crime and corruption. And now we have this idiotic foundation, which at the time, back in 2017 and 18, I was in touch with the general counsel of Obama Foundation, and I told them back then, if what you want to do is to have a vehicle for Barack and Michelle to go around and spread their ideals and maybe get involved with various political campaigns inside and outside the U.S., don't do it in a presidential library foundation. So, of course, they didn't listen to me. And instead, we can do a little bit of this now if you want. I gave you the EIN for this mess. And we're back to Jerry Corsi land. You know, where's the birth certificate for the Barack Obama Foundation? Where's Form 1023? Where are the filings that should have been made that explained why this entity with a vague set of undefined purposes, why it should have anything to do with first digitizing the presidential records, and parenthetical, you know, why do we need to have any private contractor digitize records? Why can't the government do that? It certainly spends enough money on other ideas, and it certainly has massive amounts of equipment. So, you know, when you go back into it, back in 17 and 18, I was then able to get Form 1023 for the foundation. And that form specifically stated at the time that the intention of the entity was to go ahead and serve as a presidential archival depository. After, I think, my conversations, they decided instead what they were going to do is not be a presidential library and just shoulder the cost of digitizing the records, which will continue to be held by the National Archives. How is that relieving the burden of government. I mean, the government can pay a private contractor to digitize records.
But Charles, in 2026, what does the National Archives do if not digitize records? I mean, it's not like you hear digitize. Maybe at some point people thought that was some incredible esoteric process. They're talking about scanning documents, photographing documents. Anybody in any office could do that. Why do they need a foundation with $1 billion in it to do that?
They don't. And really what they're talking about here first, I think, is not digitizing records, but sanitizing records.
Exactly.
Going through, exactly, hit the delete and discard and demolish button. And really the challenge for these presidential libraries from Clinton forward, Bill Clinton forward, is that in the internet age, and I remember this very well myself, in the beginning, it was really unclear what requirements you had when it came to email. And today it's still so, even now it's easy. You can have 10,000 different email addresses if you can pay for them, or manage them all. So in the Clinton presidency, starting then, because that's when the internet really began to flourish, are we clear that we even have all the presidential records of Bill Clinton? And I would submit that we don't. Recently, I discovered that the supposed Clinton Foundation hired a private contractor, in theory, to take the records, the electronic records that were created in the White House under a system called something like the ARMS system, to take those electronic records and turn them into records that could be housed at the library. So knowing the Clintons and their penchant for lying under oath and for getting involved in crooked schemes, I've got to believe there's a lot of incriminating evidence. If you went to all the Clinton people who were involved in the conspiracy to pretend that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton knew what the fuck they were doing, that's a lot of Ira Magaziners and Doug Bans and people like that, and Uma Abedin and others, who likely had alias emails and were communicating with all sorts of people. And all those records, many of those records are presidential records, and many of them likely have disappeared or are held in private hands as, quote, insurance policies for just this type of situation. We know, for example, in the Hillary Clinton email mess that's in the FBI vault, we absolutely know, and I believe even have, the address that Barack Obama, the alias address that Barack Obama used, one of them anyway, when he was president, communicating with Hillary Clinton on her alias address emails. So we know that there's several of those, and we've got to believe in the process. I mean, here you have two people on the campaign trail who were viciously at one another's throats, right? I mean, Bill Clinton getting that schmuck, who's that guy, Sid Blumenthal, getting after the peace pipe was smoked between the Clinton and the Obama camps. But when Obama seemed to be faltering on the campaign trail, there was a New Yorker magazine cover that pictured Michelle and Barack as terrorists inside the White House in, I think, July of 2016. So we know that there was bad blood between the camps. The emails and other correspondence wherein where Hillary acceded to the fact that Barack was going to be the nominee, and then when Barack and Barack's team and the Clinton team negotiated over the conditions that would have to be imposed on the Clinton Foundation to bring it closer to complying with the law, that correspondence would be very interesting to see, and I haven't seen it yet, and it's got to be extensive. I mean, recently I was going over ground here in this area, and I was rereading Joe Conison's book, the portion of it dealing with that period. And interestingly, Conison claims that the Clintons had the upper hand in negotiating with Barack Obama over how the Clinton Foundation would be run. Initially, the Barack Obama team wanted Clinton to step down from any role in the Clinton Foundation, whether it's the Clinton Global Initiative or otherwise. And the book says that Cheryl Mills led the negotiation for the Clintons and smacked the Obama. I mean, she just doesn't use the word smack them down, but basically the demands of the Obama administration were not remotely met. So what leverage did the Clintons have against the Obamas? I mean, he's the incoming president, likely to have a big mandate, historic win. He then wins, and the hosannas are singing from the highlands for Obama. How does Hillary Clinton have any leverage with the Obama administration? Excuse me. And so these sorts of emails, these sorts of memos, and there's actually in Conasen's book, there's specific reference to a memo that outlined the Clinton position. Okay, if Joe Conason has it, why isn't it a presidential record? So then your point, why spend $840 million on this monstrosity in Chicago? How is that? I mean, I suppose it's better than the money that the mayor is stealing, which is in the billions in Chicago. But why does it serve the national interest to have this kind of a closed entity consisting only of Obama supporters, close Obama supporters on the board, overpaying themselves millions of dollars per year? Why do you need this structure in Chicago? The National Archives is going to have the expense of forever of shouldering the cost of storing these records. Why do we set up a temple to Barack Obama? And why didn't they go through the trouble of doing it lawfully? Once again, as in the case of the Clinton Foundation, the land under which this monstrosity sits is not owned by the entity. So that means that you can't convey a freehold interest in this entity to the National Archives, and apparently they're not even bothering to do that. So why put up this building? Why heat it? Why cool it? Why insure it? Why protect it? What's it for? And why would people be interested in giving this mess $840 million? It's not for a good reason.
Charles, look at all this. What is this? A shopping mall? A parking? I mean, this is the tower part of it is one thing, but there's almost like this looks like a hotel casino complex. What the hell is all this?
And there's a golf course too. I think there's some kind of.
Well, the golf course is part of the Chicago, whatever it is, Jackson Park. But this whole bit of business here looks new and part of the Obama Center. Maybe it's parking or I don't know what, but that looks like a huge structure, no?
Well, yeah, and it says actually in what passes for the articles of incorporation, which are not specific, and they have to be specific to be a tax-exempt foundation. It talks about in a filing that I was reading, I think in either North Carolina or California or somewhere, when asked by the state regulators, what was the purpose, they say it's economic development to revitalize portions of Chicago. I mean, that is not charity. And when you have valuable waterfront real estate in a declining city, but a big city, the value of that real estate, when improved, can greatly exceed $840 million. So, the people in Chicago, the Chicago people who donate bigly to the Democrat Party and to the Republican Party. And remember, Peter Smith lived around Chicago, and he was explaining that to get any business done in Chicago, as a Republican, you had to contribute to the Democratic Party, and you had to be friendly with Democrats because it's a Democrat-controlled city. So, I mean, on the face of it, this is in-your-face grift. Before we get to an objective assessment of his presidency, I've talked in the past about the game of bridge, the card game of bridge, and there's a version of it called duplicate bridge, where you get a bunch of teams together, and all the teams play the same hands, and the goal is to see who could do the best job, who can pile up the most points with the same set of hands. And in the case of Barack Obama, yes, I mean, I think he deserves a presidential foundation because I think we need to study carefully what actually happened during the eight long years when he was president, and now in his post-presidency, when it appears grand juries are thinking about serious criminal charges against him and others for interfering with and trying to maybe even overthrow the Trump presidency. And then once he was out, once Biden was installed as a puppet, doing the best they could to try to destroy Trump and his family. I mean, the excesses, the abuses of power under Barack Obama, the decision to let Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton grift to their heart's content through an entity that is not actually even a formal organization, to tell the Department of Justice, for the Department of Justice to tell the FBI, you can investigate to your heart's content the Clinton Foundation, but we're not going to prosecute. To meet with Bill Clinton on the tarmac, and to lie about what was really going on there. I mean, it's outrageous behavior. And if we let it stand and we let it be celebrated in this structure, this monstrosity in Chicago for the end of time, we are hastening the destruction of our nation. I mean, this guy, he claims he's a smart guy. I think that's crap. But he is, in theory, or was a lawyer. I think he also elected not to keep his law licenses current, not because he was threatened with disbarment, but just because he didn't want to go through the trouble of doing that. That he could get away with this and have multiple mansions, fly private, get all these sweetheart business deals afterwards, is only going to embolden the soy boys and latte ladies at the various institutions of higher dumbing down, universities and colleges, to say, well, if the Obamas can do this and walk away with, controlling $1 billion in assets in their 60s, starting with nothing, what can we do? Let's see if we can out Musk. Let's see if we can, be richer than Elon Musk, grifting off charities. And why do it just in Chicago? Let's do it around the world. This is an odious example. This, in many ways, even worse than the Clinton Foundation.
Well, it's got more money in there. It's got over $1 billion already, and it's basically, I don't know. I mean, they don't even have the building yet.
Yeah, and it's, it's making a mockery of foundation laws, and it's making a mockery of political fundraising limitations. Remember, there was that law that was the McCain-Feingold Act. The Supreme Court struck it down, limiting contributions for political candidates. And Obama thought, at the time, said that was one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever. And look what he's associated with Act Blue, with Bill Ayers, with that Susan Rosenberg. These are people who are abusing every aspect of fundraising laws to advance an agenda which is about as close to anarchy as I think you could find. Emboldening Antifa, emboldening the Black Lives Matter. I mean, a responsible thing, and Bill Clinton actually did this in the campaign when he was running for president. There was some, I think, Sister Soldier was her name, and she was, I think, advocating violence against people who didn't support black causes or something like that. And Bill Clinton, didn't physically hit her, but he trashed her on the campaign trail, and that actually increased his standing. Barack Obama should have done that with the Black Lives Matter movement. Instead, he was celebrating that bullshit and that grift. And now on a daily basis, thankfully, the FBI and Department of Justice and IRS are beginning to do something about it to attack the fringes of the problem. But, charities and the Barack Obama Foundation in particular should not be engines for personal aggrandizement. You're not supposed to use, this is, I think, a 170B1A6, you're not supposed to use such an entity to create any type of advantage or edge for an individual. You tell me what the Barack Obama, they must have they're probably busy creating multiple altars inside the structure to begin each day worshiping Saint Obama. That's not a charity. And indeed, the charter of this charity says that it can be engaged in religious purposes. What sort of religious purposes is Barack Obama qualified to oversee? And he's not even actually a trustee of this thing.
But isn't that Isn't that better? Isn't that one of the problems that Bill Clinton has, that he is?
No, it's not better if you're deriving a personal gain from an organization in which you're not, if you're controlling the affairs of an entity and you're shadow director. It's awful. And this
Wow.
thing, when you
Valerie
look
Jarrett
it up,
is getting paid by this, Charles. We've probably seen this number
bigly.
before, but I mean, $750,000 right here.
It's preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. I remember it was a different era. It was 40 years ago, but when I got involved creating something called the Columbia Land Conservancy, which was a real charity, I was at initial meetings, and the subject of salary for the executive director came up, and there were a bunch of snobs in the room, and one of them said, why would we have somebody as executive director who can't work for free? Was the attitude. But to pay, and Valerie has a lot of money already, to pay her $700,000+ in salary, that's $60,000 a month.
All these people
the average earner,
big six-figure salaries.
Well, the average earner across America, who's in a family of 2.2 earners typically, makes about $60,000 per year. Why would you need to pay Valerie Jarrett a salary of $60,000 a month to do what? And all these other hangers-on.
I don't know. Digitizing fees. It's expensive, Charles. You got to run that scanner all day.
It's preposterous. And that's before you get to the Netflix deal and the various mansions. How in the hell did the Obama family acquire enough wealth to maintain that chef-killing mansion over there in Martha's Vineyard, the big house in D.C., the estate in Chicago, and I believe they have access to a big property in Hawaii? I mean, that costs a lot of money to maintain all that. And where's the regular income coming from?
They say mansions don't kill chefs, paddleboarders do. Is something interesting that I've already just sort of spotted right here, which is this Lakeside Alliance Construction Services got $158 million from this thing in 2024. Seems high.
Yeah, again, the possibility to claim when you're doing construction that something cost far more than it really cost is the oldest game in town. They were probably doing it the first time Ugg, hit his brother Yug on the head with a rock, and then proceeded to try to build a structure with using some contractor in the Stone Ages. They probably came up with the idea that you can hide the theft of money by claiming that a construction project actually cost more than it really did. It's the oldest game in the book.
Look at this, Charles. They have updates from the construction site. We're almost out of time, and we're going to continue this conversation in the First Amendment Forum. We'll look at more videos about the construction, the highly economically efficient construction of the Barack Obama presidential Easter Island head. People are going to be able to join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, on subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And people who follow me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribe there will be able to get it. I had a great interview earlier today with Nick Bryant and Ken Silva. So if anybody missed that, they can check that out after we're done here. But we're just about to head over there to the First Amendment Forum. Charles, anything you want to say before we do that?
No, that's great. I look forward to joining everybody there.
Very good. We'll be right back. Stay with us, everybody.